Hello, folks. Brandon Chapman with you today. It's July 26th. It's the Theo Night video. As FAAMGs are about to take center stage this week with earnings, crypto still in the show today, but a lot of stuff to talk about. VIX going opposite directions, dogs and cat, no, whatever. Let's get rolling. So we look at the S&P. We are grinding higher today. We are about 0.15% for the session. I mean, glorious. We've had 5 consecutive updays. Whoopity-doo, right? We're back up against highs. As you look at the VIX, what you'll notice is that as the S&P is rising, the VIX is also rising, about 17.78 right now on the VIX just before today's close. So we saw the market rising, new all-time high as the VIX is rising. About 2/3 of the time they should go opposite directions. But again, when sometimes you get a smallish update, sometimes the VIX might go up as well, or vice versa. But it is unusual. It is something to consider taking note of today, that the understanding or the expectation for volatility is expanding even as the market's hitting new highs. Now, what could be causing this? Well, go figure that, tomorrow, 7/27, after the market close, Apple, Microsoft, and Google announce their earnings. Could that have something to do with it? Probably. Then we've got Facebook on Wednesday after market close and Amazon on Thursday after the market close. So essentially, we have 5 companies that represent 22.89% of the S&P 500 approximately, and about 42% of the Nasdaq. This is a significant amount of the market cap that's going to announce earnings this week. And if you look at how things have trended leading into this announcement, certainly Apple kind of dipped last week. We've rallied back up to that pre-sell-off. Apple might have a little more of a potential balance in terms of movement. As you look at the expected move for the week, we're about $6 at the moment. So again, maybe plus or minus 6, but you start to look at the other players here, right? So tomorrow we got Microsoft. Microsoft, we're trading at new highs, sold off very little. We've had a very nice rally towards 288 off of the lows last week around 274. This seems to me, along with many of these other FAAMGs, that look, we might see a bit of skew. What does that mean? The skew just means that look, the upside may not be as great as the downside if they miss. So don't be surprised if there's a beat that Microsoft may not move up a lot tomorrow, or going into Wednesday after the close. Again, you look at the expected move for the week, 9.33. But again, put that in perspective, $9. This is a $288 product. What is that? That's about a 3% move, right? I mean, so my point is that this is not insignificant. So if we're seeing the S&P rise, certainly there's the possibility there could be some movement over the next couple of sessions, right? 2 or 3, 4 days. For example, again, Google, let's take a look at that one. Google, whichever one you look at, it sold off very, very little. We're breaking new highs. Also, again, the market may be very skewed for Google in their announcement. Maybe a smallish amount of upside if they do well, but a lot of downside if they don't. It's almost like a lose-lose situation for the market. Benefits very little, maybe a little expansion and volatility if things go well. If they don't, we could see significant downside. Again, looking at Facebook for the week, right, as well. Up huge, right? Again, would expect to see maybe some skewed distribution going into its earnings on the 28th, and then Amazon. Amazon sold off. We're kind of crawling back to the prior highs. Is probably a lot like Apple in terms of maybe the possibility of a large upside move and a large downside move is more balanced. But when you start to look at the market more broadly and you look at the skew index, what you see is that on Friday, the skew index did tick up to almost 160 at 159.44. The market's placing even more hedges in place, buying puts, selling calls. It's skewing the volatility, which is basically suggesting that the downside risk is becoming more pronounced, but you will expect to see a greater frequency of small updays. So small updays with crash risk. That's what skew means, right? That's what it's pointing to. As you look at the term structure of the SPX options, if we look at the 3-month VIX as a ratio to the 1-month VIX, we are falling just a little bit today, but you'll notice the ratio is about 1.23, which says that the 3-month VIX is 23% higher than the 30-day VIX. The market's pricing in a significant amount of volatility in the coming weeks. Again, we'll see whether it's going to be realized or not. But again, this isn't as common. It's been more common this year because the market's just consistently been worried about larger declines. They've been trying to hedge it away. We haven't had, I think it's been over 160 days since we've had a decline of over 5%. Are we due? Well, this is a more, from a seasonal perspective, this is a more vulnerable time for the broader market, and it does coincide with a lot of earnings this week coming up from some very key players. Now, on the sides, just some economic data that came out today, you'll notice new home sales were released, 676,000 against a forecast of 800,000. So a big disappointment. The previous was 724. What you'll notice over here is that we were beating early in the year and we're seeing it just miss the yellow's expectations. This is the actual. So we're missing expectations by wide margins. And if you look at, for example, July of 2021, we're starting to come more in line with where we were in July of 2019. So again, we're starting to see the housing market cool. And oftentimes this, as supply starts to come on, trying to realize those higher prices, we can see this thing may see a tail even more as again, might see more people going to existing homes if prices start to fall, and those new home prices might be relatively sticky. So again, we are seeing some cracks in the foundation of the housing market. Now, last week it didn't necessarily just, some of those cracks certainly didn't dissuade stocks like Home Depot that fared very well. It's one of the better performing, industries in the market. Lowe's as well, but you notice Lowe's is down today. Some of the home builders like DHI fared very well last week. It's starting to look a little peaky after that gap lower and rally last Thursday. Pulte has earnings coming up as well this week on the 27th, tomorrow before the market open. What is their outlook? So again, experiencing some weakness after a solid week, kind of coming off those lows. We'll see what the market has in store. Now, as you consider some of the stuff that's happening today, there was a lot of interest. We're talking about unusual option activity in kind of that cryptocurrency space. And this is when we talk about Amazon and their upcoming earnings here. There is some speculation that Amazon may start to take crypto payments. Why not? I mean, it does make it very easy to do. I mean, it's easy to facilitate. It's all digital. Now, again, it's kind of interesting that Amazon might be willing to accept something as decentralized when so much of their business model and Apple and Amazon and Facebook and Google and Microsoft is all about centralizing data. Of course, cryptocurrency, the is all about what? Decentralization, right? Blockchain technology is decentralized. So again, it seems like it's kind of counterintuitive that they would accept and promote decentralization of data when their whole business is on centralizing it. But again, there is that emphasis. People have it, they may want to use it, and Amazon may provide it for them. So as we look forward to Amazon earnings this week, do they start to mention? And so these rumors start to become more of a reality. Because what you saw today, and you saw it really begin last week, RIOT, for example, on the 21st through 23rd right here, there was some decent upside call activity on RIOT on the 30 July 29 and the 23 July 30 strike prices. So at the money, not really far away, but today all of a sudden we're breaking out. Why? Well, if we look at Bitcoin, Bitcoin is surging. It's up 22% today. I wrote an article, many months ago for our website on the blog. The fourth halving of Bitcoin is at the fourth turning, meaning that what? Bitcoin went through a halving last year. And every increasing halving, it's led to increased performance in terms of appreciation in the price of Bitcoin, but also a matter of, is it gaining greater acceptance more broadly on the part of institutions and others? It certainly appears to be that way. And so again, if we can get adoption on a platform like Amazon, this is relatively positive for Bitcoin, because if you were to price the market cap of Bitcoin, compare it against something like gold, for example, I mean, we could push over 100,000 on Bitcoin, something I talked about last summer in our retreat. But again, some of the positiveness of Bitcoin is being realized, and you're seeing it reflected in some of the data. I mentioned a RIOT today. I mentioned RIOT last week. RIOT today is also seeing some positive option activity, And specifically, and this popped up since my session earlier in the day, on the August 45, the 13 August 45. So out here, it's pricing out of the money. What are people doing? They're starting to speculate. We might see some movement out of Riot. So again, it's kind of amplifying that potential. Mara, for example, had some significant activity last week on the 21st. It's breaking out today. Coinbase today, COIN. So again, this isn't necessarily a Bitcoin miner like Riot and Mara, but again, it's a place where people can facilitate Bitcoin purchases and payments, things like that. Coinbase up 10% today. And if you look at the option activity on Coinbase, it was a 30 July. So this week's expiration basically at the money now at 250. The one that was really intriguing, and then it just started taking off, was BTBT. Sorry, no, actually, we'll stick with, sorry, I'll go BITF really first, then we'll go to BTBT. This is a relatively new company. Again, their IPO was in June, does similar mining as well. This is an August 5. So if you're looking here, August 5 expiration, kind of spilling over 5,750. The one that was kind of exciting, it was up big earlier, and it got a lot bigger, up 100% so far today, was BTBT. Much earlier in the session, it was an August 750 that was hitting. Now what you're seeing is the interest is moving further out of the money as the stock continues to just run. So now all of a sudden that 750 that was at to slightly out of the money, now all of a sudden it's deep in the money. So again, BTBT is one that is just continues to move. All these are tied to what? They're tied to um, they're tied to cryptocurrencies, right? BIT Digital. So BIT Digital co-mine agreement with DigiHost, kind of spring a Canadian company. But again, all this stuff's just on the back. Is Amazon the big question? Are they accept crypto? Before we get too excited about a lot of these companies, we have to realize that, companies like Mara, for example, they've been mining for a while. They've been mining with Bitcoin over 40,000. And here's the deal, folks. They're not generating positive operating cash flow, right? I mean, the profitability side of it, of mining, is not there. So it's not a long-term solution, right, to mine Bitcoin, because in the end, it costs more than actually the price of Bitcoin. Maybe if Bitcoin takes off, but as the Bitcoin's gotten higher and higher, their actual revenues have gone up, but so have their operating losses. So just remember, these aren't amazing companies individually, but they can be potentially good opportunities from a trading perspective. Just take something like Mara, for example, right? I mean, one of the things with these companies, many of them, they can have high short interest, or again, otherwise, they might just see very significant positive skew here. And, again, what you're seeing is that call volatility is rising pretty significantly. So what does that mean? You can buy lower, sell higher. So if you're trying to speculate on these, buying straight calls and puts may not be as great, but if you're looking for something shorter term, maybe like a 6 August, for example, you can buy a lower strike price, sell a higher. It reduces your cost because these out of the money calls are expensive. It's a way to capture a piece of the upside if things do really, really well, with limited risk if they don't. Again, it's a low probability trade, but again, these stocks are highly volatile. Not a lot, but again, there's kind of a new cycle that's benefiting them right now. So speculative interest coming in and Bitcoin starting to surge right now certainly helps. We're not seeing that same interest come into gold, however, right? So this is about more Bitcoin acceptance, may allow it to kind of normalize. It still has those broader issues that gold's having right now, namely the fact that the dollar is relatively strengthening as the Fed has tacked towards more of a tightening policy, or at least not as expansionary. As we look at bonds today, as we kind of wrap things up, not a whole lot happening in the bond market. We're down a little bit in yield, come off our lows. However, as you look at HYG, this is prices. HYG's down today. So as treasury yields are lower, uh, junk bond yields are higher with prices being down. As you look at LQD, similarly, prices are down a little bit the same time that IEF is basically flat in the session. So we are seeing that, in essence, that a little bit of increase in the perception of risk of the corporate bond market right now. And there's our bell. But again, something to watch. Do we start to see that divergence? But the big news of this week is the FAANGs are taking center stage, but at least for today, it's the cryptos that are stealing the show. But anyway, Brandon Chapman with you. This is July 26th. It's our Theonite video. You have a great. We'll see you back tomorrow. Thank you.